Storytellers Hour. Welcome to T.O.M Storytelling Hour July. Star is from our Stateside University. We are learning storytellings and public speakings, and she is one of the fellow storytellers. And I was stalking her for about 2 months now, and she finally agreed to join us, and I'm very excited. Starlet Collins is an aspiring motivational speaker, aspiring entrepreneur who has a love for animals and trying new foods. She is currently a certified projects manager in the clean energy industry, and she would laugh for a living if that could be a career. Nice. She's connecting from California, the West Coast, USA. So, Star, I'm going to bring you to the stage. Take it away.
Thank you, Masako, and thank you everyone for joining. So my speech is entitled Overcomer. Webster's Dictionary's definition of an overcomer is a person who overcomes something or succeeds in dealing with or gaining control of some problem or difficulty. In order to keep on going, we must overcome some sort of adversity. At one point in all of our lives, we are confronted with the question, do I keep going or do I just give up and throw in the towel? My name is Starlet Collins, and I consider myself a professional overcomer. I have experienced several challenges in my life, and with each one, I decided to keep on going. To be honest, I really didn't feel like I had a choice. It was either remain where I'm at or give up, and neither one of those were options for me. Has something ever happened in your life that just knocked the wind out of you? Has something unexpected, tragic, or something that would change your life forever? For me, that day came 10 years ago. It was Tuesday, January 26th, 2010. I was at a friend's house preparing for a job interview. I was on the phone with another friend when I received several calls from my sister. I knew it must have been important. I clicked over and said hello. The first words I heard was, "Mom is being rushed to the hospital." I sat up straight, and with a sense of fear, I responded with, "Well, what happened?" She began to explain how my mother collapsed at work. She had been grabbing her midsection and complaining of severe pain. She promised to call me back when she had more information. You see, my mother and I were very close. We were like best friends. She was like my confidant, my therapist, my life coach, my bank at sometimes. I was young, and she always financially supported me. Her love for me was so genuine and so strong. I could always hear it in her voice and in the way that she looked at me. I was the youngest, and I was her baby girl. And at this time of this phone call, I was 25 years old, fresh out of graduate school. When my sister called me back, she informed me that although my mother was in a lot of pain, she was stable. I asked her if I should come back home, as I was 300 miles away, and she told me no, to go to my job interview, and emphasized that that's what my mother would have wanted me to do and that she was going to be okay. The next day I went to my job interview, and then my cousin and I drove 5 hours north to my hometown of Modesto. Upon my arrival, I went to my mother's house, dropped off my things, and headed straight to the hospital. When I walked into my mother's hospital room, she perked up, she smiled at me, and I gave her a hug and a kiss. We talked and laughed together. I wanted to stay the night with her, but because she was sharing a room with another patient, I couldn't. I was exhausted, so after getting an update about her condition, I went home and went to sleep. I woke up the next day and I got a phone call from my grandmother. During the night, my mother was moved to ICU because the doctors didn't believe she was receiving the level of care she should have been getting on the regular floor. The doctors met with the family to let us know that although her condition was not critical, and the percentage of mortality was only 6%, they still wanted her in ICU because it was one nurse to every 2 patients, and they just wanted to monitor her more closely. I was relieved to hear this. However, I was still a bit concerned. She was now delirious from the pain medication she was receiving, but all in all, she was stable. For the next 3 nights, I would stay with her. We would sing TV commercials, mainly those infomercials. I would update people on her condition, and I would just spend quality time with her. When I left her that Saturday morning, she was okay, but the doctors did inform me that her condition was not improving. I went home and slept as I usually did. I then was awakened by a frantic phone call from my sister. Mom can't breathe on her own anymore. They're going to put her on a ventilator. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My stepdad and I rushed to the hospital. On the way, I kept getting updates about her condition. It was getting worse and worse. When I arrived at the hospital, I walked into the room and the doctors were giving her CPR. That is the last memory I have of my mother. She went into cardiac arrest. They were never able to revive her, and the time of death was 6:13 p.m., January 30th, 2010. At that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. In the years preceding my mother's death, I had to leave my life behind in Los Angeles, move back to Modesto, move in with my sick grandmother, and try to rescue my grandmother's struggling business. Prior to her death, these were things my mother was doing, and because I thought I was doing the right thing, I stepped up to the plate. I went from a normal 25-year-old living a carefree life to having all of that change in an instant. A year after my mother's death, my childhood home was auctioned off by the bank in foreclosure. I literally had days to get as much as I could and move it to a storage unit. A year following that, one of my grandmother's homes burned to the ground. Luckily, I had worked diligently and was able to turn things around in her business and make it income generating for her and myself. Also during this time period, my grandmother's health continued to deteriorate, and I spent many days and nights in and out of the hospital with her. If I can be candid, all of this was incredibly emotionally, mentally, and physically taxing on me, but I had to keep on going. Moving into 2014, I got married. Now, for most people, this would have been an exciting time for them. However, for me, this was bittersweet. Although I was married, due to my circumstances, I lived in separate cities the first year of my marriage. Me and my husband lived in separate cities the first year of our marriage. We would see each other on the weekends, but that was pretty much it. This was starting to wear on the both of us. I became incredibly depressed, and I knew something had to give. I finally spoke to a therapist, and this was a huge game changer for me. She not only validated my feelings, but encouraged me to leave all this behind and go be with my husband. And if I didn't do this, my marriage would ultimately start to suffer. I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, ironically. It was the first time in a long time I felt I could breathe and get my life back. For so long, I was doing what others told me to do or what they expected of me. I was unhappy, depressed, and anxious, and really needed to focus on my own self-care. Furthermore, it's very challenging to take care of somebody who is very ill on top of dealing with the grief of unexpected death of a loved one. At this point, I was 30 years old. My grandmother's condition had gotten to a point where she needed nursing care and I could no longer care for her. She was moved into a residential nursing facility and I moved to San Jose. I was finally able to start my life, finally given permission to grieve, and finally able to take care of me. Now, I shared my story with you not for pity or sympathy, but there are three main points I would like to highlight. I learned that when you keep on going, that doesn't necessarily mean you keep doing the same thing. This was important because I thought I was doing the right thing, but in hindsight, I should have never taken on such massive responsibility. I was too young, too vulnerable, and still in a lot of pain as a result of my mother's death. Many outsiders view what I did as noble or honorable or selfless. However, doing all of this, myself, I was being mentally, emotionally, and physically sacrificed. So when it was time for me to keep on going, that meant I had to leave everything behind, regardless of the consequences. The end result of this was I got me back. I got to discover who I was at this point in my life. And it was no longer being dictated around my circumstances. Furthermore, I got to finally grieve and really process the death of my mother and everything that happened preceding her death. The second point I learned is that I need to be the one to determine what keep on going meant for me. Throughout all of this, I realized I had to be the champion for my own well-being. I had to be the one to evaluate what I was doing and how it was impacting me. And finally, I had to be the one to decide it was time to take care of me. I had to be intentional and make decisions that may not have been popular, but were imperative to the improvement of my mental and emotional health in this season in my life. It was like I was surrounded by people, but I was still unseen. But if I didn't see me, I can't expect anyone else to see me either. Finally, I learned that no matter what the circumstances are, to keep on going. There was a quote that stated, if you're going through something challenging, keep on going. I interpreted this as, why stop in this challenge? Why would you want to stay in this? Hearing this quote, I picture myself walking through mud or fire and ask myself, why would I want to stop in anything like that or stay stagnant in anything like that? If I kept putting one foot in front of the other, eventually I would come out, and I most certainly did. I compare that time into my life as a tunnel. I had to keep going through the tunnel, even if I didn't know where that tunnel was going to lead. But I knew I couldn't stop. I had to keep going through it. There were many times in my life I wanted to give up. The pain of losing my mother was so challenging for me, and I just didn't want to feel it anymore. Plus, feeling overwhelmed and forgotten in the midst of these responsibilities, I never got a chance to properly grieve, and I just kept hoping and praying that if this was going to be my life, let me be okay with it. I made it to the end of my tunnel, and looking back, I learned some incredible lessons, many of which I wouldn't change, and that make me the person I am today. Thank you for listening.
We are now going to move to the interview portion. So let me bring up our first speaker to interview, and that will be Starlet Collins. So let me go to my questions here. So first off, Starlet, we were asking for people's favorite quotes, and I see yours. It's not how you start that's important, but how you finish. Can you just give us a little insight into that quote?
Yes, so that is my favorite quote, because in life I have learned that things do not always turn out how we expect them to turn out. You know, growing up, I had this vision. I wanted to be a doctor, and that didn't work out. But I also realized it's okay to change and course correct. Like, there's so many different things that we can do, not to just be defeated or disappointed and stay there. Like, if you need to change and move into a different direction, then do that and do the best that you can at that. And that, even doing that and being successful in that, doesn't have to be it. So it's not how you start something. It may start off rough. You may start off life rough. You know, you may start off anything rough. You may have made mistakes in your life that you might beat yourself up over. But all in all, we should still keep going, because the finish is not over until we're gone. So that's the inspiration of that quote.
Well, that's great. In my own life, I've had so many false starts. It's taken me forever to find a path, but you know, who cares? It's, as you said, it's more how you finish. So now, what are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
I think, oh gosh, I sent these to her, and I know I said spontaneous, outgoing, and assertive. Yes, I'm very direct and assertive. Like, I'm one of those people. I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to the mailman. I'll talk to the dog, the cat. I'll talk to anything or anybody. I'm very outgoing and personable. But I'm also very direct and assertive. I'm not the type of person that like beats around the bush. What you see is what you get. And I'm also very spontaneous. I've taken, vacations with a week's notice. I don't do that now, but in my 20s, when I was unmarried, I'd like literally decided I was going to Jamaica in like 3 days and went. So I was very spontaneous, and I love that too. And I plan to, do that again, but my husband is more of a planner. So I have to find meet him halfway.
Yeah, especially with kids. I know it's hard to be spontaneous in that sense. But,
right. Right.
Yeah, I've got 2 myself. So excellent. Well, is there anything you'd like to announce, any upcoming events where we can find you online or anything?
I don't have any events, and I actually don't even have a webpage yet. You can find me online on Facebook and Instagram. I will actually drop that information in the chat. I'm actually a newbie public speaking. I started Stage Time University back in February, and I'm just trying to continue to develop my public speaking skills. I'm thankful to Masako for giving me this opportunity just to kind of network and get to know other speakers and continue to develop in public speaking.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Starlet, for being on with us, and it was great having you present your speech, and thank you very much.
Thank you.